Russia is moving into Ukraine in what is not an incursion, but an outright invasion. And our neighbor to the north, Canada, well, they're having some struggles understanding what freedom is all about. Those are just two of the topics we're going to be covering on The Breakdown. Before we get into our stories, I hope you will subscribe to the channel and be sure when you do, hit the notification bell and click the like button and maybe share it with other people. And we always welcome your comments. Well, as I said at the top of our get-together here, Russia is now full on invading Ukraine, not just a piece of it, but all of it. Through the night, they have been firing rockets and artillery. They're moving land forces in. And all the while, the United States and its President Joe Biden seem to be somewhat surprised. Why they are is anybody's guess. But it's interesting to look back at Joe Biden's maybe his view of Vladimir Putin and his boasting and bragging of how Putin would never do this if he were president. Let's watch.
I've gone head to head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff.
I'm going to stand up to him.
I don't believe we're a nation that's going to bow down to Vladimir Putin. I know I will not.
And I know he doesn't want me to be president. But to tell you what, when I'm president, things are going to change.
We need someone to take office this time around who on day one can stand on the world stage, command the respect of world leaders from Putin to our allies.
Yeah, you know, when I'm watching this, I'm first of all seeing Joe Biden's talk about how he's going to stand up to Putin. Well, the world is waiting. But one of the things that I found most interesting is that Putin wouldn't try this and that things were going to change. Well, folks, they have changed. And here's how they've changed. In the 8 years that Barack Obama was in office and Joe Biden was vice president, Putin felt pretty free to do what he wanted. And he moved in and took over Crimea. Nothing happened. That was in 2014. Joe Biden was vice president. Donald Trump became president in 2017. Things did change. Donald Trump had an America First policy. And even though the Democrats and the far left and the media, but then I repeat myself, even though they all said that Donald Trump was colluding with Russia, he was letting Putin get away with anything, Putin tried nothing, not one thing in the entire 4 years. Why? Because he didn't know what Donald Trump would do. He's pretty sure he knows what Joe Biden will do, and Joe Biden is doing it. The mildest possible responses that he could present. All the time acting as if he's surprised that it even happened. But here's what has happened. After Joe Biden has basically said he'll be the new sheriff in town, he'll keep Putin from doing anything. Let's look at scenes from just last night at what Putin was doing inside all of Ukraine, including Kyiv. And that's not fireworks at a baseball game, my friend. That is the sight, the sound of war. And what you just saw involved people of Ukraine getting killed by Vladimir Putin and the Russian invasion. Now, in the midst of that, Joe Biden has said he didn't think that Putin would do it. Expected to be able to handle all this by diplomacy. Joe Biden hardly ever lets reporters ask him a question. And when they ask him a tough one, which, by the way, is the only kind of questions that a reporter ought to be asking a president, especially in a moment like this, I want you to see how Joe Biden responds to a very obvious question. Mr. President, did you underestimate Vladimir Putin?
Do you think you may have underestimated Putin?
Thank you. Time to move. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm not sure what he had in his teeth that he was picking at, but it was apparent he didn't have anything in his brain that would engage so that he could give an honest answer, a straightforward answer to a simple question. Did you underestimate Vladimir Putin? It's a question I think that people have a right to ask, and quite frankly, he has a responsibility to answer. Well, how's this working out for him? We're now in a place where the overwhelming majority of Americans disapprove of how he's handling the crisis in Russia. Let's watch.
More than half of Americans now disapprove of how Joe Biden is handling the Russia-Ukraine crisis. This is only 40% say they approve of his overall handling of foreign affairs. This number down 16% from just 1 year ago.
It's hard to imagine a greater freefall of approval numbers of the public that we've ever seen with an American president. I can't remember it in my lifetime since the beginning of polls. In the meantime, we've got Jen Psaki, White House press secretary, at the podium in the press room, who has the audacity, the condescending audacity, to try to tell us that their policies are working just beautifully. Here she is.
Why is this a better way, a more effective way than issuing sanctions unilaterally and then possibly pressuring the Germans to take action themselves?
Well, it hasn't been operational, which is an important component, right? It's not like oil has been flowing through Nord Stream 2, which is a very important component here. And we made the assessment, others can have different assessments, that this would be the way to achieve the outcome that we've now achieved. Others can have different assessments. There's no proof or evidence that their approach would have worked. Ours has worked.
Thank you so much, Jen Psaki, for another non-answer. Now, the whole context of this is that Russia is only as strong as their energy market is. The whole reason that there was such an outrage among many people here in America when Joe Biden shut down the Keystone XL pipeline that would have helped America to become even more energy free and independent, and at the same time creating actually a position where America would be a major exporter of energy to Europe and to the rest of the world, which means that we would cut into Vladimir Putin's energy exports, particularly to European nations like Germany, who gets a lot of their energy from Russia. At the same time that Joe Biden was shutting down energy production in the United States, he gave approval for the Nord Pipeline, number 2, to be opened up to Germany. Jen Psaki tries to say, well, it's not really flowing right now. Jen, you're missing the point. We've already got one of those pipelines that is flowing, and by stepping back from the world stage and energy production for America, what we've done is given Vladimir Putin a lot more customers for his energy, which empowers, emboldens, and enriches him. That's disastrous. All the while, when our own energy costs started soaring and single moms can't afford to put gas in their tanks to get their kids to school and get themselves to work, Joe Biden's answer is, hey, OPEC, could you guys pump some more oil out of the Middle East and sell it to us at whatever price you want? Oil is now over $100 a barrel. It's a gut punch to every single person who has to drive to work and back. And not everybody can afford an electric car right now. And if they could, they still have to generate the electricity that will power that car. So anybody who thinks that the management of this particular part of our economy, energy, is going well, just go to the gas pump, look at the price, and tell me that you're really excited about how this administration is handling energy. And there is a direct correlation in all of that and how this administration is handling foreign policy, specifically how it's handling Russia. But don't worry, because downstream from the White House, we've got Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, third in line to the Oval Office in the presidency, who might not have passed 7th grade geometry. Geography. I'm starting to sound like Nancy Pelosi. Her geographical skills lacking just a little bit. Let's watch.
Some of the leadership of, well, if you look at the map and you see Hungary and you see how it is encircled, Russia, Belarus, Crimea, which they have taken over but have, it's still a danger now to Ukraine. And then you see Poland and Romania and all of those countries just abutting. That's a Russian influence.
She's got the gestures of a classroom teacher, just not the capacity to actually tell her students where things are. Well, we said at the top of the breakdown that we would be covering the situation in Ukraine. We also want to look a little bit to our neighbors to the north, the Canadians, generally kind of a mild-mannered and wonderful bunch of people that we like and get along with. But they have a tyrant, an absolute tyrant for a prime minister now. I haven't seen anything like this since Castro in Cuba. Seems like Justin Trudeau is really trying to out-Castro by declaring emergency powers. Why? Because some truckers honked their horns too loud, and it bothered little Justin. Maybe he should go back to doing his dance routines in blackface as he has repeatedly done. But I want you to see, this is Justin Trudeau, who seems to have more of an interest in freedom and democracy for the Ukrainian people than he does for his own Canadian people. Now, I want you to listen to his words in context of what he has done in his own nation to absolute trample the freedom and the rights of the workers who live in his country. Watch.
Canada and our allies will defend democracy. We are taking these actions today to stand against authoritarianism. The people of Ukraine, like all people, must be free to determine their own future. We will continue working with our international partners to safeguard Ukraine's territorial integrity and prevent further Russian aggression.
Just an incredible irony that there stands Justin Trudeau, the trampler of human rights in his own country, the person who shuts down the truckers from being able to share their disdain for this tyrant, and somehow he's really worried about the freedom that's being experienced by the people of Ukraine. You can't make this stuff up. Now, Justin Trudeau wants to tell us for sure that these emergency powers that he's invoked, by the way, emergency powers that he did not even invoke after 9/11, that wasn't as big of an emergency to Justin Trudeau as was some truckers driving their rigs into Ottawa, setting up bouncy houses for kids, shoveling snow of neighbors, and passing out food. What an outrage. So here's how he describes getting rid of the emergency powers as soon as he can. Watch.
The Emergencies Act is not something to undertake lightly, and it's something that needs to be momentary, temporary, and proportional. We don't want to keep it in place a single day longer than necessary. But even though the blockades are lifted across border openings right now, even though things seem to be resolving very well in Ottawa, this state of emergency is not over.
You know, it's just going swimmingly well up there in Canada, thanks to Justin Trudeau and some of the people on his left wing. And it's hard to get any further left of Justin Trudeau. But one of the members of Parliament found a way to do it. I'm not kidding. She makes the most ridiculous speech perhaps I've heard on the floor of a legislature in a while. And trust me, having been a governor for a while, I've heard some pretty crazy speeches from the floor of a legislature. This one, however, may go down in history. Not because it's good, but because it's just jackrabbit crazy. This is a member of Parliament in Canada comparing the honks of the truckers' horns to Heil Hitler. You got to see it to believe it.
How many guns need to be seized? How much vitriol do we have to see of honk honk, which is an acronym for Hail Hitler, do we need to see by these protesters on social media?
Someone really needs to go into that chamber, grab her by the arm, and get her to a hospital. Put her on meds as soon as possible. What an outrage. But what's really happening? Do you think it's the truckers who more resemble a totalitarian government? I don't think so. In fact, there's some disturbing scenes I'm about to show you. It's of a relatively elderly trucker, by the way, an immigrant from a former communist country who came to Canada and loved freedom. He lived here for 20 years. And he celebrated the freedom that he had in Canada until the little dictator, Justin Trudeau, decided to send the cops in the streets, not just to tell the truckers, quit honking your horns, move your rigs, but pulling them out of their cabs and senselessly beating them and kicking them with their knees. What you're about to see, I will confess, is disturbing, but you need to realize that this is what Justin Trudeau has unleashed upon truck drivers who peacefully got out of their rigs, followed the commands of the police officers, got down on their knees to show that they were surrendering, they were ready to be arrested. This is what they got. Watch. I saw this trucker interviewed, and it was really amazing because He did not speak with anger or rancor. He did speak with a broken heart, because this is a man who escaped communism to come to a nation he believed would grant him freedom, and said for 20 years it did. And he said, "They broke up my body, but not my spirit." And I thought, that really is the sound of freedom. And it's a sound that we hear all over the world, whether it's in Canada or Ukraine, or for that matter, in your hometown. Well, thank you for watching this edition of The Breakdown. I hope you'll subscribe to the channel. Be sure to hit the notification bell, click the like button, and we always truly welcome and urge you to send a comment or a question. Now, there's not going to be a live stream again this week. We've got some production changes, but our show will be on the air Saturday and Sunday, and it's going to be a good one. I hope that you will be sure to watch right here on TBN. Sign up for the newsletter. You can get my take on all the news of the day. It's free. You can get it at MikeHuckabee.com. It comes to your email inbox twice a day, and there is no charge. Advertiser supported, so we don't have to ask you to pay for it. That's going to do it for this edition of The Breakdown. I'm Mike Huckabee.